Big day and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Footy Show. Thanks to Ontime Delivery Solutions. My name's Yeendy. I'm joined by Tara Murray. Thanks for joining us. Certainly a big weekend of footy.
It was. We had probably one of the matches of the season with Wallen and Rupertswood, who both look like they're going to be up the top contenders come the season's end, and we had a few goals kicked by a certain full forward down at Melton Central, so it was quite an interesting weekend.
That's the one we'll turn our attention to first. You did speak to the great man Dylan Weir over the weekend, who kicked a lazy 19 for Centrals in the big win over Lansfield. How did it all pan out?
It is. I think he kicked 5 goals in the opening few minutes, so for him, he knew it was going to be his day early on, but he was actually took a cold into the game, so he wasn't 100%, and he said after those first 5 kicks he was stuffed, so he played out, ended up kicking 19. He said his teammates looked after him later in the game. Once the result was beyond doubt, it was quite a convincing win, nearly 170 points, that his teammates kept looking for him to find a few more goals, so he managed to do that. And I think there was a photo floating around by one of our photographers, a brilliant mark by Blake Henderson as well, so it was a good day all round for Centrals.
I heard a bit of a rumour that a message was put from Dylan out to the runner to get the coroner on standby just in case he does go down with the man flu. The poor guy was certainly a great effort by a player that is really starting to make his mark, and I think it's a shame for Centrals that they probably haven't got the results on the board sooner, to the point where it would be really beneficial for them to have a crack at finals.
It is. Well, they're just outside the top 6 at the moment, but the issue for Centrals, they don't play a lot of the lower sides twice, so when they do play these lower sides, they are looking to get percentage boosters, because it could come down to percentage at the end of the season. So obviously Dylan's gone to the top of the goal kicking now, and he's been a really, really good contributor for Centrals. He was their key signing in the off-season, and he's shown exactly why they've got him across.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we'll touch on another, devastating news on the weekend as well. We know how good the Wallen-Rupertswood game was, but it was an incident earlier on in the day that caused a lot of distress. But also, I guess, despite the downside of it all, we saw some great benefits. And of course, had Liam Birch go down with a heart attack during the under-19s. It was only he'd actually been playing for the seniors the previous 2 weeks and had been in some really good form. But if it wasn't for a nearby stranger who walked by and helped resuscitate him, things could have been a hell of a lot worse.
It is, and from what I believe, Tony Freeman, it's actually the second time he's been involved with that down at Williamstown Cricket Club at a training session a few years ago. So Tony was there watching Eloise play netball for Rupertswood, and he stepped on the field and helped that. And look, and I think it shows the example of defibrillators and how important they are for football clubs. From what I've heard, that Adam Birch was very big in getting that out at Wallen, and the whole Defib for Life campaign actually started, I think it was about 7-8 years ago, because of an incident that happened down at Rupertswood with Stephen Buckman. So it sort of shows the importance of having these in sporting clubs, and in the end we're pretty lucky that Liam seems to be all right. He looks like he's, from all the reports, he's going well in hospital. Not what you want to see on a footy field, but could have been a lot worse. He's
enjoying his time down Media Street. I know that, which is fantastic, and I think it's quite fitting as well. You had Birchie, who was very adamant on getting a defib over at Wallen, but you also had the Rupertswood community that were really big on getting them full stop right across Victoria. So to have those 2 clubs participate on the day, 2 clubs are very passionate about having defibs and looking out for each other in that respect, I think is fantastic.
It is, and it could have been a lot worse. So hopefully we'll see Liam back on the footy field. He's an important cog for Wallen in the under-19s and seen as a future senior player as well. So hopefully that. And then we had the big game later in the afternoon. So
and hard for the players for both sides to back up for that, isn't it?
I think players and officials. I know some of the officials, I think one of the coaches up at Rupertswood had seen a player pass away on the field up in Gisborne a few years ago. So It is difficult for them, and I think Andrew White from Defib for Life spoke to both all the playing groups later in the day, and it was hard to get that focus, but I think once they knew Liam was okay, it was all of that. But I think in the end the result isn't that important compared to the rest of the day. So a brilliant game, but in the end it was only a minor thing in the end result.
And we know that cancelling is also being offered tonight at training for a lot of the players as well, from both sides as well, which I think is fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about that great game on the weekend over at Green Hill.
Yep, so obviously the Magpies started the better of the 2 sides, and I think they kicked the only goals of the first quarter, so they sort of got that lead, and it was that one they were able to hold on to the whole day. So they managed to keep Todd Pottles goalless, so that's a little bit of something we haven't seen this season. So I think it was Brenton Cox down there in defence, and in the end Wallen played with a better side. They played a lot better brand of football. Rupert's Wood didn't play well, and you look at it in the end, it was 7 points, and you've got a side that wasn't happy with how they play. So you're not going to be too disappointed with that, the end result, that they were still in the mix, even though they didn't play well. But I think it's what the performance we wanted to see from Wallen. Obviously, they played Riddle and Sunbury Kangaroos earlier in the season, who were both finalists. But this is the first time we've really seen them take on a game and play a 4-quarter performance and beat one of those contenders, and that's what we've been wanting to see from the Magpies, and it's exactly what we got. And
especially given that what transpired during the day earlier on, to have that courage to go on. We recall that we saw a game where they beat Riddle, I think was it last year, and they had the loss of Barney Fitzgerald that week, and the playing group were quite rattled by that, but they come out and put one on an incredible performance and end up beating Riddle for the first time in over a decade. So when there is a little bit of internal pressure within the team through things outside footy, they have a really good habit of sort of gelling hard together and working hard together and supporting each other and then producing good results.
It is, but at the same time, I think they are one of the top sides this season. Yep. It's debatable, are they the favourites now because they have knocked off Rupert's Wood? And whether they are or not. I know Rupert's Wood have signed a new player in Nick Grigg, who has come across from East Keilor. He was co-coach out there, and he kicked 48 goals last season for the Cougars. So he's going to add a genuine full forward for the Sharks as well. So they've still got more. I think both these sides have a lot of depth, and they're clearly the two favourites. But at the moment, which one's the favourite, would you say?
I would probably still say Rupert's Wood at this point in time, because I think that they've got the runs on the board, having had the success last year, and they're obviously a quality side this year. But I know with Wallen just missing out on finals, they're doing all the right things at the moment. There's no doubt about that at all. But I think at the moment, Rupert's Wood are the team to probably beat. Maybe out of the two sides, I wouldn't say the competition. I'd hate to put a favourite on it this time of year, but I think that would be they'd be the favourites going in at the moment.
Yeah, and obviously they've been the two best sides this season, we've sort of seen. And I know the Magpies have another challenge this week. Not this week, next week coming up is Diggers Rest. So they've got another challenge ahead of them to show where they sort of sit in the competition, and they're doing everything right.
They're doing everything right, just like Wood and Heskett, who comfortably and confidently took down Broadford. They could have used our old mate Josh Pound behind us, who has been a regular fixture on our show, Poundy. He could have been handy over at Broadford to kick a few goals, because they had a tough day at the office. But before we talk about the game itself, you do have some news to release.
Floating around a little bit on the media is that Skip Bray won't be coaching on next year. So there's, I think he's posted that on Big Footy, so I think they're already starting to look for the coach, and I'm sure Skip will help out. He's unsure what he'll do with his coaching future, maybe still the Interleague.
Yep.
You look, he's got 2 successive wins there, but yeah, there's been a few posts that he won't be coaching on, so he's taken on a tough job this year, and it has been very tough out there, but hopefully, it helps get them on the right track.
And Wood and Heskett on the match itself had a pretty solid outing.
It is. I think they'd say it was solid. It wasn't brilliant. I don't think the Hawks were too overly happy with their performance. Obviously, they still had a 140-odd point win, and they had 45 scoring shots, so it could have been a lot bigger as well. So they only kicked, their accuracy at goal was only just over 50%, so it could have been a lot bigger. You had Tom Gawthrop kick 6 up front, but for the Hawks, it was getting a big win against a lower side, and that's what you just expected to come out of that weekend. Yeah, and
after the break as well, they know that they've got some pretty big challenges coming up in the back end of the season. So to get big wins like this, give them, that group, a bit of confidence. The fact they took down Diggers the other week, I think, gives them a little bit of belief that in the back half they can start to win some of those games.
There is a lot of belief, and they've brought in some experienced players who have played in grand finals and performed on those bigger stages, so that's always going to help. So you've got Alistair Ray's one of them, Tom Wilson, even Tom Carland, the coach out there. They've all played on bigger stages, so they've brought that confidence in with them, and they're showing that they'll match it with anyone, and they're really putting these lower sides to the sword, which is what you expect from the top side. So it's good for their percentage, because the likes of Wallen and Rupert's Wood, Macedon and that are having the exact same results against these lower sides.
Exactly right. There, a game that I think was a massive surprise is that Riddle comfortably took down the Sunbury Kangaroos. I know Sunbury Kangaroos have quite injury depleted at the moment, and they, after talking with one of their officials last night, they probably really didn't have the depth to begin with this year, and to lose guys like Dan Gregory, who was an outstanding captain, outstanding backman, to an injury. Not too sure on how long he'll be out for, but to lose players like him and a few others, that's pretty hard on the team.
Well, that's the biggest thing. They don't have the depth that they've had in the past. So obviously their reserves have been very, very strong in the past, and I think have won 3 out of the last 4 grand finals. So they've always had that depth, but this year they haven't had it. And the minute they've had injuries, they've struggled. I think injuries, a little form, and a mixture of things, but I think it was possibly may have been missing 12 out of that top side. So you look at that any team's going to struggle when they miss that many from their top side, but at the same time, they weren't happy with how they played on Saturday. They were goalless for 3 quarters.
Yeah, and managed to kick a couple.
Yeah, no side would be, especially a side that was looking at playing finals, would be happy with that result. So Riddle, in the end, did what they've been doing. They obviously didn't kick straight again, so that's been their thing, but they still won by 100 points. You have Hayden Ross kick 5 goals again, so he's bobbing up quite regularly with a bag of goals, and I know he's up there in the league goal kicking. But in the end, for Sunbury, it was just a horrible day.
Yeah, well, that's something they need to bounce back from. Is their finals hope starting to slip away, or are they still in the mix?
I think they are. Look, probably the Melton Central's loss was a big one for them. They needed to win that game to stay in the mix, especially with Central's winning matches, all the matches they should win. So these are the sort of matches that the Sunbury Kangaroos at least need to win, or at least be competitive. Before this match, they sort of had been. We obviously saw they probably should have got the win against Wallen. They took it up to Macedon for a half. They took it up to Rupertswood for a half, but they just haven't been able to go the full 4 quarters, and this is probably their most disappointing performance of the whole season.
Fingers crossed that they can bounce back from that. Great win there by the Bombers. Macedon confidently took down Romsey at home.
It was an interesting day for the Cats. They sort of only overran the Redbacks in that last quarter, but they only had one player on the bench after quarter time. So it was a lot of hard work for the guys who were fit, and it was a lot of their experienced guys that led the way. You had the likes of Markworth, Knox, Kilmartin, McConnell, Waters and Wright were all named in the best. So they're their top echelon of players, and obviously for Nipper Wright game 200 as well, so it was a big day out there. So for the Cats, obviously you go, quite convincing win in the end. They won by nearly 60 points, but it was a hard slog for 3 quarters, and they managed to fight it out, and that's what you want to see.
And with congratulations to Nipper Wright as well. He's stuck through the club through the bad times and through the good times, and obviously a bit of discussion going around in the AFL at the moment. You've got Nathan Jones from Melbourne. He played 250 games recently, and he played in a heck of a lot of losses. And then you're looking at what's going to happen with Todd Lynch at the Gold Coast. Should he stick around even though the club's going to go through some bad times? Well, Nipper's seen some really bad times at that club, and but he's still stuck by, improved his footy, and had that belief, and the success has come.
Yeah, and it's sometimes shown if you leave a club for premiership success, you don't always get it. So
Correct.
A lot of players would love to stay at the one club, and I know Nipper loves the Cats up there, and the Cats love him. So he ended up captain in a premiership last year and got that ultimate joy. So it's good to see a guy like that reach a milestone such as 200 games. Yeah,
but a heck of a guy as well. Diggers Rest comfortably accounting for Rockbank.
No surprise here. The Boroughs have been very, very dominant against these lower sides. I think we saw it against Broadford earlier on in the season when they had quite a few multiple goal kickers and a few had a day out. It was Cad McCabe on the weekend who kicked 11. I think that's his second bag of the season. I think he may have got 7 or 8 against Broadford earlier in the year. So not much of a surprise there. Obviously, Jamie Austin has been probably one of Rockbank's best this season. He was named their best player for the second time in 3 weeks. So they are getting a few players through, but I'm assuming the Rams will probably enjoy a break after a tough result like that.
Absolutely need it there. And it's interesting with McCabe as well, is that against some of the lower sides, he does have the tendency to play a bit forward and acts as a really good goal kicking option, but against some of the stronger sides, he floats more in the midfield. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Look, I think it's just the way Diggers Rest have got. Yeah, Diggers Rest have got a lot of flexibility. They've got players who can play multiple positions, and it gives them a bit of unpredictability as well. So it means they can throw Cam forward against some of those better sides and give them a different look up forward. So I think it's just how Diggers Rest structure up. They're a very, very flexible side with players who can play multiple positions.
Definitely right there. Well, very interesting round 7 in the RDFNL. Tara, thanks so much for your company, and thanks so much for our mate Poundy for looking over our shoulder. And we know he's been getting plenty of stick on social media virtually every week. So some people tell us he's the star of the show. So we thank him. But we also thank On Time Delivery Solutions. Tara, we look forward to catching up with you later on in the week.
Thanks, Anthony.